Welcome to Front-End Engineering Explained. Let me start this one off by painting you a scenario. So the scenario is you have three containers on a page. When a user interacts with one of the buttons, you want to show these containers. Now, there are multiple such things that we do all the time in web development. Sometimes it might not be on click, it might be on focus, maybe you're using an intersection observer. Doesn't matter. In the end of the day, something is not visible, and after a user interaction, you want to make it visible. Might also be for other reasons that's kind of a user interaction, but not exactly. The underlying thing is something's hidden, now you want to make it not be hidden. So myself and a colleague today ran into this scenario over at Factorial, where I work at the moment. And the thing is, we went to this idea that I've done so many times, but then we also encountered the same problem that I've encountered so many times, which is, cool, so something is display none, now you want to make it visible, but what if it's not display block that you want? What if for one of these it's display block, but for another one it's display flex, and for another one it's display grid? Now, you could say, well, wherever you can just create a little class, and it can be .show, and depending on the component or whatever, you can say display grid, display flex, display block. But I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you had like a utility class that you could just use everywhere? Imagine as your code base grows and you have more and more of these things, you have these little .shows peppered all over the place, and you may even start running into specificity problems and all this kind of stuff, right? Then I thought, oh, you know what? Like there's this language called SAS, which is a CSS preprocessor, which means you write in this like CSS-like dialect, and then there's a build step, and that takes the non-CSS things and compiles it into CSS. And one of the things that's been really, really cool about SAS and that I've used a lot of times is Mixins. But we don't have that in CSS. But like if function, we're also getting Mixins in CSS. The thing is, this is still early days. Technically, you can play with it now in Chrome Canary. So today is April 3rd, 2025, just so we know when I'm making this video. So today, you can play with Mixins inside Chrome Canary, but, clearly that is, and Chrome would love for you to do that. The Chrome developers would love for you to do that and give feedback, and I would encourage you to do so. But that means that it's still in this very early phase where a lot of things can change. And of course, you can't use this anywhere in production. So I was like, this sucks. So I guess we're going to have to do the thing where you have the individual classes, because what's the other option? The other option is you create three different utility classes, like show container, show grid container, show flex container, and then, apply the appropriate one depending on your situation. But that's already three utility classes. What if sometimes you want to do inline flex? Now you have a fourth one, right? It just keeps going. And then something hit me that I have no idea why. I've never thought about this, but I think it's because for the last almost year or so, I've been doing front-end engineering every day. It's my job again, and I'm loving it. But that means that I'm thinking about and encountering all kinds of things all the time, and I'm learning more and more about my tools and the languages, and I'm thinking more creatively about stuff. So I think that might be why now all of a sudden it hit me. Because we can get what I just mentioned without having to wait for Mixins. And we can do that with CSS custom properties. So let me show you what I mean. So if we go to the code of this, then let me just show you the containers down at the bottom. So those are just the buttons. Here's our one container. So this is animals. Then we have another container called fruits. And then we have another one called bat, right? And we just have a little bit of JavaScript here at the bottom that just, when you click, it'll just show the appropriate or toggle a class. And this is that class that we're talking about, right? It's going to toggle this thing called show container. Now, let's jump up here, because right now, if we look at the different ones, so here we go. Animals is just display none. Fruits, display none again. It has some additional stuff. I'm using CSS nesting here if you're curious about why this looks like this. But you can already see that here I'm specifying a gap, so I most likely want either flex or grid. Here I clearly want grid because I'm using grid template areas and I'm using grid area here. But then with bat I have display none, and then when you're in prefers color scheme dark, because bats only come out at night, right? I want to show it, but here it can just be display block. Ignore the display grid here, it's a container within bat. But the bat container I want to set display block. So this is the perfect scenario. So if we create a utility class that we call show container, how can we use CSS custom properties to allow us to do this? So let's look at it. So show container, and no AI, that's not what I want. Display var display type. So now we have a custom property. Right now it has no value. So if you just used show container now, it'll absolutely do nothing because display type is undefined, so display can't have a value of undefined, so it will do nothing. But the var function can take a fallback, so we might make that block, which means if display type, the custom property, is not set and you use show container on something, it'll fall back to block. So, for example, with bat, we don't have to do anything, because when we activate the bat, this and add show container onto the bat container, it'll be display block. So if we now go back here and we activate the bat, there's the bat, because it's display block, because it's using that fallback property. If I tick it again, it goes away because I'm toggling the class. Now I'm using color scheme dark. That is why, because it's at night here, as you might see with the clock here at the top. So this is why it's visible. Of course, if I switch to light mode, then even that won't make it show up, because of course it'll only show up if prefers color scheme is dark. Cool. So now we're using the fallback default. Now for animals, we want flex, because we have basically just a bunch of cards with some text and a icon in there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use CSS nesting again. We're going to say add show container, but no AI. We don't have to say display flex. We just say dash dash display type flex. Now, because of this, we're actually now defining for the first time what the value of display type is. So now when we flip on the show container, it's going to be flex. So if we go back here and we show animals, pop, you can see here is our beautiful, lovely flex container with our 2rem gap. If we click it again, it hides it. Now fruits, we want a grid. So we can just copy this. Let me just not copy an extra space, and we can jump in here again and set it here, and this time we say display grid. And of course we'll know that it's actually setting it to grid if we're actually getting a layout where the avo is the header, the lemon is like the nav on the side, and then we have the pineapple and the apple stacked one on top of the other. So show fruits, and indeed that's what we get. We get our avo, our pineapple, our apple, and our lemon. And we can, of course, show all of them, and if we scroll down, we have our bat. So now you can see, using CSS custom properties, we have this single utility class called show container, and all we need to do is set the display type, and it can be anything, and if we don't set anything, it'll fall back to display block. I think this is super cool, and this shows like the hidden power of CSS custom properties, and there's even so much more you can do with these, but I just thought this was a really cool thing that we ended up using as well on a project at Factorial. And so, yeah, go ahead and make use of this if you find it useful. I would love your feedback. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comments. If you like this one, give us the thumbs up. And if you like this kind of content and you want to know when I post more things, because I'm, for some reason, posting a lot of videos the last week or so, please subscribe, and yeah, until the next one, peace, and make awesome stuff for the web.